Do you enjoy a good challenge when you're reading science fiction or fantasy? Do you like to work a bit to really dig into material? I do. I'm not sure if Zach does.
Sometimes.
Well, today we'll find what books he thinks would be good for those of you who like a challenge.
Hi there, and welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son sit down and talk about challenging sci-fi and fantasy books. I'm the son of the equation, Zach.
And I'm the father, Jim. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you're going to enjoy our conversation here about some really challenging books to dive into and potentially be very rewarded by. If you do enjoy it, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Zach and I really love having all of you with us. So, I did recently do an episode that was
Yeah.
very popular about some of the most challenging fantasy and science fiction reads that are out there that honestly are too challenging for a lot of people, but for those who do persevere, they get a lot of reward. But it was
Now,
all me. It
yeah,
was all
I
my
wasn't
books.
able to be there. I don't disagree with most of your list.
Oh, but if you do disagree with some, I'd love to hear that too. You can squeeze that in.
More importantly, there are some things that I think are worth mentioning or adding in because you were talking about these great series that are challenges, but you think are absolutely worth it. And I've got some more that you didn't mention, but I think fit the bill.
And your reading spectrum has been a little different from mine, and what you get into that I haven't got to yet, or just what rang true for you differently than me.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have that second brain on the channel too. So it'd be great to hear from what's in your head. So that's what this one's about today. So, Zach, what would you add to a list of deeply challenging books that may be too hard for some people, but you think are worthy?
The first, I think, is something that a lot of longtime fantasy fans have obviously already read, but a lot of newer to the genre or modern fantasy readers would find incredibly challenging to get into because it uses an older style, older language. It can be deeper, harder to get into, and it does make you think sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. How did this not get on the list? This is a challenging series to get into for a modern reader. That doesn't mean it's not good, it's not worth it. It absolutely is.
So, what is hard about The Lord of the Rings?
Largely, it's language. It is a slightly more archaic style of writing, as well as being a little bit wandering or meandering or in love with its own descriptions or songs here and there that do add to the plot and enrich the story, but often can kind of lose a reader that doesn't quite have that style of attention span anymore.
And yet, what makes it so great then to persevere through an older style and a little bit meandering on the text?
This book is 100 years old, not quite, but getting there. It's getting there. At least from when it was like originally written, beyond published.
Okay.
It's getting old, but it stands up. It is one of the few fantasy works from that time that is still worth being kind of on everyone's shelf in everyone's experience. These are books that tell a great story that connect to much deeper themes about humanity and the way we want the world to be, but also tell it in a genuinely heartwarming way to see the trials and tribulations along the way.
Awesome. Okay. So, The Lord of the Rings. What's next?
Next, I'm jumping to the complete opposite side of the spectrum. We're going to a much more modern series. This is the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir.
Yeah, this is still being written. This isn't done
it
yet,
is.
right?
There is there's a fourth and I believe final book that I'm anxiously waiting to come out. There is no release date known that I know of yet.
Well, we didn't need to give any sort of synopsis of The Lord of the Rings. It speaks for itself. Give us a general gist, very short. What's this Locked Tomb series about?
I often describe the Locked Tomb series as lesbian necromancers in space. Is that 100% representative of everything that happens? No. But part of the challenge and experience of reading this book means I can't tell you too much. Because the biggest challenge that I hear about the series, I didn't have too big of an issue with. but I hear a lot of people do sometimes struggle with, is that it does not hold your hand for world building. It drops you right into the middle of things, and you still have to kind of fumble around even halfway through the first book to really get a picture of, sorry, what does the world we're in actually look like? What's happening? What is this magic stuff that's going on? What is this world? What are the complexities of it? How did we get here? What's the history going on? And it's the way it reveals that and shows more and more over time and continues that world building even to the most recent book, I think is beautifully done. It's fantastic, but it can be overwhelming, especially if you're more used to something that is a little bit more rooted in our reality or a hidden world, or very upfront with its world building. Maybe the first half of the first book is just world building and there's not really much plot. This is a plot and character driven series that reveals nuggets about the world over time, and you have to piece it together.
Okay. Is that the primary reason that makes it a challenge to read?
I would say so.
Okay.
It can be a little bit obscured what the world looks like as you go. And so I didn't have an issue, but I have heard a lot of people who start it and go, I don't get what's going on. I'm lost.
No, that's a legit reason to be on a challenging list. A couple of the ones I had on my list, same reason. That's the basic thing. No hand-holding. You just get thrown in and you have no idea what's going on, which can be a lot of fun for many readers. So what's the payoff with this series? Again, without spoilers, why is it worth the challenge?
Let me put it this way. In the past couple of years, I've read some books and some series that aren't completed, and there have been 3 that I am waiting desperately for the next book. 1 was the Stormlight Archive, and I just got Wind and Truth. 2 was Red Rising, and I'm still waiting on Red God to finish that off. And 3 is The Locked Tomb. I'm waiting for Elect of the Ninth. This is a fantastic series. I love the world. It took me a little while to find all the pieces that I got, and even then I don't have a complete picture. I love it enough. I've stolen things from my D&D campaign. I've worked things in here. It definitely is something that may not appeal to every reader, but it is one of my favorites at this point that I have read in the modern day.
Okay. All right, good enough. How about your third one?
Third, we're going to something that is not only challenging, it was too challenging for you.
Ooh.
This is The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb.
Well, not too challenging.
You gave up. You didn't find it
I didn't
worth the
enjoy
appeal.
it enough to want to read.
Well,
Now,
here's the thing.
that said, what you've said about the series and what others have said, it's all back on my TBR. So I do intend to jump into the Farseer trilogy this year.
This one, I do have multiple reasons why I think it is a challenging series to get into and to get through. Number 1, if you're talking about the entirety of the Realm of the Elderlings, this is a long, long, long series. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 16 books
I think
long?
you're right. I think so. Yeah.
4 trilogies and 1 tetralogy.
Mm-hmm.
But
something like that.
16 books is a lot, especially when each book is 600, 700, 800 pages or more. There's a lot to it. But then when we look at the actual books, this is super character driven, and it is all about the development. And so much happens at a very slow rate often. There is often kind of a slow building and meandering through the events that are happening that give you a lot of depth to the character, which is really cool to see. But you also sometimes are halfway through a book and you're looking at it and going, what's happened? Or even sometimes we've got great character development on a character that I just don't like. Or honestly, I could see people getting bored with this series.
Ding, ding, ding. That's what happened to me when I read the second trilogy.
For me, I think when you buy in enough, you kind of have to tell yourself in for a penny, in for a pound. And as you go, you look at it and you grow with the characters enough that it's impossible not to be invested in those characters. They are so well-rounded and fleshed out that you want to see what happens, even if you don't necessarily care about all of the overarching plots and pieces. And I think I'm only partway through the whole thing, but I think more of that will be impactful by the end of the entirety of the Realm of the Elderlings. So I do see the concerns and why people might have issues with this series. But at this point, 6 books in, I do think it is worth it.
Okay. You've got a couple more, right?
I do. I have a couple more here. Next on my list is going to be The Acts of Cain by Matthew Stover.
Ah.
I'm so happy to have found this series. This is one of the best works of fiction that I think I've read.
Wow.
Because it's fantasy, but it's also sci-fi. It's not necessarily my single favorite, but it is really, really good. However, it can be dark, it can be gross, it can be harder to get through and a little bit dense. Sometimes it gets a little bit wandering and philosophical on some things, or even theological, which doesn't appeal to everybody. It can be harder to get through. And by the time you're getting to the end, it's kind of a coin toss as to whether you think this is brilliantly done or you're so lost at what is happening, because it is very non-linear
That
in its
final book.
storytelling.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So at multiple different points throughout this series, it is a challenge for different reasons. I think it is well worth that challenge.
Yeah, me too. Totally. But what makes you believe it is worth the challenge? You're just saying you believe that, but what is it about this that's so good?
There is wonderful development of characters, their journey and growth that they go on. I think the deeper philosophical level does enhance this series significantly, especially as a social commentary on the world and humans in general, how we go about our lives and what we want out of the world, what we could want out of the world. It also has very well written action, a little bit viscerally hitting some punches every now and then. It doesn't pull those punches,
No.
but it is exciting to read.
Yeah, if you're the type of person who wants your fiction to really speak to deep truths about our life, our world, that's the Acts of Cain, man. It has so much depth.
Just be aware that, one, you may have to kind of tough through a couple of hard moments or gross spots. And two, if you really want to get to those hard truths, you do have to be ready to use your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not a simple one. This is a great inclusion on your list, Zach. The Acts of Cain. I'm almost embarrassed I didn't put it on mine. I guess I had to throw you above.
It means I get to say it, you know?
That was your softball. There, I tossed that to you. Okay, you've got one more.
Yes, I've got one more, and it's a little bit different from my other picks so far, but I do still think worthy of being included, and that's American Gods by Neil Gaiman.
Ooh, that's a tough one to talk about today. You've heard about Neil Gaiman in the news, haven't you?
Nope.
Ooh.
Regardless of what you think of the author or what is going on, because right now I don't, and I'm going to remain blissfully ignorant until I finish this talking, at least.
This is not an endorsement of Neil Gaiman as a person. This is about his books.
No, I don't know much of anything about Neil Gaiman as a person, nor do I really care. But this is a fantasy book that reads like a literature book, which is potentially good, but for a lot of fantasy readers is not going to be your thing. It's going to feel slow. It's going to feel like not enough interesting things are happening all the time. But this is another one where if you engage your brain, you pay attention, and you think about the implications, it speaks to kind of some deeper truths about how we view belief systems, value systems, especially with America and immigrant nations, and bringing ideas and cultures from other places and how that might change perceptions. Does that change the value of them? I thought it was a very interesting read. I really don't think this is for everyone. I think there are plenty of people who would pick up this book and go 2 chapters in and go, why did I start reading this? It is a style issue, if anything.
I haven't read any Neil Gaiman, and it just everything I've read about his books, I'm like, no, I don't think they're entirely my thing. So I get it.
For me, this felt like a high school or college required reading style that I actually enjoyed.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that right there would be challenging. I feel like I'm in college again. All right, those are your books. Those are your recommendations for challenging reads. Nice addendum to our list from before. What do you guys think? Those of you watching this video, have you read any of these? Would you concur about the challenging aspects of them, as well as potentially the reward? You know, was it worth it? Are there any more that you would recommend as
Yeah.
challenges? I know a bunch of people put them on my episode, but what did this trigger? You got some more?
Give it any new ideas, or did I still miss some of those things? Because I did.
And if you'd like to talk about these things with us more, look down in the show notes. We've got an invitation to our Discord server, and you can come talk with other people who love fantasy, sci-fi, horror, nerdy stuff. We've got our social media links, even got an email there. We'd love to hear from people, so reach out. Anything else you want to say, Zach?
Nope.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.